Fear gnawed at Elera's gut like a hungry wolf. It always did. Elera gripped the ornate palace key, its cold metal a stark contrast to the sweat beading on her palm. Dust motes danced in the lone shaft of moonlight slicing through the kitchen's high window, making the grand room feel even colder. Each night, she wiped down the gilded surfaces, polished the silver, and made sure everything was perfect for King Andrew's breakfast. It was her offering job, after all. But this quiet duty was a constant reminder of how close, yet how impossibly far, she was from any real power. He was here. The man who saw her only as a blight, a danger. Despite that, Elera moved with practiced grace. Her hands, nimble from years of tending to Rebecca, made light work of the task. She hummed a soft, tuneless melody, a lullaby for her own frayed nerves. Truth be told, the palace was a cage. It offered meager pay, just enough to barely cover Rebecca's mounting medical bills. Rebecca, her mother, lay suffering back in their small dwelling, her breath a fragile whisper against the silence. Rebecca's rare autoimmune disease was a relentless thief, stealing her energy, piece by painful piece. Elera's knowledge, once a source of pride, felt useless against this invisible enemy. It brought her work, but no cure. What exactly was this knowledge anyway? You might wonder. In fact, she often wondered if her knowledge, her very being, was truly the reason for her pain. Andrew, the Lycan King, had certainly thought so. His voice, icy as a winter storm, still echoed in her dreams. Which, he had snarled, his accusation sharp as a silver blade. She wasn't one. Not really. But try telling him that. Andrew was her mate, or had been. The bond had pulsed, undeniable, but his fear and suspicion had been stronger. He'd looked at her, truly looked at her, and seen only darkness. Because of that, her heart had hiss-hattered. It still ached, a constant throb beneath her ribs, a ghost of what might have been. How could a king, meant to protect his mate, turn so cruelly? It was a question that haunted her every sleepless night. Not only that, but his rejection had branded her. Whispers followed her like shadows. Orphan. Rejected. Witch. She often wondered if she was doomed to this life, always on the fringes, always fighting, always alone. Her only goal? Rebecca. Protect Rebecca. Save Rebecca. Her mother's survival was the compass of her existence. And she would do anything. Anything at all. What followed was the familiar click of the door as she left the opulent kitchen, the silence of the empty halls swallowing her steps. Her path led not to grand chambers, but to a humble home where a fragile life depended solely on her. The damp chill clung to their small dwelling, seeping into Elera's bones the moment she stepped inside. The dim lamplight cast long, dancing shadows across Rebecca's pale face. Her mother lay curled on their worn cot, each breath a shallow, uneven gasp. Rebecca's eyes, once bright with fierce love and shared laughter, held a muted pain now, like embers fading in a dying fire. Elera knelt beside her, a cool cloth already in hand, gentle fingers smoothing it across Rebecca's feverish brow. "How are you feeling, Mama?" Elera's voice was soft, barely a whisper, yet it brimmed with a love so potent it could almost mend broken things. Rebecca managed a weak smile, a wisp of a sound. "Better, my fierce one. Always better when you are here." Her hand, thin and trembling, reached for Elera's, her touch a faint comfort. Still, Elera felt the weight of unspoken fears pressing down on her chest. Rebecca's words were brave, but her body told a different story. The autoimmune disease, relentless and invisible to others, was slowly consuming her. What's worse, the latest bills from the healers sat on their meager table, a mountain of paper demanding more money than Elera could ever hope to earn. She worked at the palace because it was the best offering she could get. But even that wasn't enough. It never was. As a result, a desperate kind of resolve hardened in Elera's heart. She knew Rebecca wouldn't make it without a rare, costly elixir, a remedy whispered about in ancient texts, almost a myth. It cost more gold than a minor lord saw in a lifetime. Elera traced the fading lines on her mother's palm, a familiar ritual. Rebecca had taught her everything, had always believed in Elera's strange knowledge. But this time, knowledge wasn't enough. Money was. No matter how hard she tried, the guilt was a constant companion. Guilt that she couldn't heal her own mother, guilt that she was failing. She felt like she was drowning, each day a new wave threatening to pull her under. She looked at Rebecca, her most precious person in the world. "I will find a way, Mama," Elera vowed, her voice trembling with the ferocity of a hidden beast. "I promise." Because her mother deserved more than this slow decay. She deserved life. Her mother's soft breathing filled the silence, a fragile melody that fueled Elera's desperate quest. This desperate need would drive her to the edge, and beyond. The cool night air bit at Elera's skin, a welcome shock after the stifling closeness of their dwelling. The forest called to her, a primal urge that settled the frantic thrum of her human heart. It was her escape, her release. Slipping silently through the old growth near the edge of the king's territory, Elera shed her worn clothes, the fabric falling to the dew-kissed earth. Then, with a shudder, her bones shifted, elongated, fur erupted, and her vision sharpened, painting the world in shades of silver and shadow. She was a lone wolf, sleek and agile, her raven fur blending with the deeper darkness of the ancient trees. Running was instinct. Running was freedom. It was the only time she felt truly unburdened, truly herself. Suddenly, a scent hit her, a raw, earthy power, laced with something wild and intensely masculine. It wasn't Andrew's scent, that bitter memory that still haunted her. No, this was different. It was a dark, intoxicating aroma that wrapped around her, pulling at something deep within her wolf. She felt it, a primal draw, a connection she hadn't felt since her rejection. Because of that, a cautious excitement, tinged with fear, began to bloom in her chest. She pushed faster, her paws barely touching the mossy ground. Without warning, a shadow detached itself from the deeper woods, moving with astonishing speed and grace. It was a wolf, immense and powerful, its fur the color of midnight itself, its eyes glowing with an intense blue light. He was magnificent. Her breath caught in her throat, even in wolf form. She didn't know what scared her more, his sheer size, or the way her wolf pulsed in recognition. Mate. The word echoed, silent but undeniable. He ran beside her, effortlessly matching her pace, a silent force. They moved as one, weaving through the trees like a dance choreographed by fate itself. The forest held its breath around them. The tension broke as they reached a clearing bathed in moonlight, a shimmering lake at its edge. The black wolf stopped, standing still, watching her with a longing that mirrored her own. She wanted to know him, to connect, but an old fear, a familiar pain, clutched at her. She remembered Andrew's cold accusation. What if this wolf, this powerful mate, also sensed the fabricated darkness within her? What if he, too, saw a witch? As the wind shifted, carrying away her hesitation, she turned. With a final glance that pleaded for understanding, she vanished back into the trees, leaving behind only the lingering scent of vanilla and fear. But she didn't know that the powerful alpha, dinero, now held the memory of her scent, a beacon drawing him from the shadows. And he would not let her disappear again. A soft warmth. It cradled Rebecca's fragile hand. The scent of blooming health, not the sterile tang of sickness, drifted to Elera's senses, pulling her from a restless sleep. "Rebecca!" Elera's eyes snapped open. The first golden light of dawn filtered into their small dwelling, painting the walls with hopeful hues. A gasp, soft and disbelieving, escaped her lips. Rebecca, her mother, lay peaceful on the cot. Not just peaceful, though. Her cheeks held a faint blush, like the delicate petals of a rose kissed by the morning sun. Her breath, oh, her breath, was deep and even, a steady, comforting rhythm. No more gasping. No more shallow whispers. Elera scrambled to her mother's side, heart pounding a joyous, frantic drum against her ribs. She pressed her palm to Rebecca's forehead. Cool. So cool. No fever. Her fingers traced the lines of her mother's face, marveling at the sudden absence of pain etched there. It was as if a sculptor had smoothed away years of suffering overnight. "Mama?" Elera whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Rebecca?" Rebecca stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Her eyes, once clouded with illness, were clear. Bright. They held a spark, a vibrant life Elera hadn't seen in years. A genuine smile, wide and unburdened, stretched across Rebecca's lips. "Elera, my love," she murmured, her voice strong, rich, like music. "I feel different. Like I slept for 1,000 years, and woke up new." She stretched, a small groan escaping her lips, but it was a groan of comfort, not pain. Impossible. Elera thought. How? Because of that, Elera's mind raced, searching for an explanation. The healer had said Rebecca was declining. There was no cure. No rare elixir had been purchased. So what miracle was this? Did her own knowledge unknowingly manifest? Or was it something else? Someone else? She felt a strange tingling in the air, a faint trace of something wild, something powerful, that stirred in the back of her mind like a half-forgotten dream. It smelled vaguely familiar, yet she couldn't place it. Still, overwhelming relief washed over her, warm as sunlight. Rebecca was better. Her immediate goal was to cherish this moment, protect this unexplained healing, and find out how it happened. Her heart swelled with a hope she hadn't dared to feel in so long. This was a turning point. A true blessing. But then, a flicker of unease, who would do such a thing? And why? The impossible had happened. Now, Elera needed answers, even if it meant stepping into a world far more mysterious than her own. The joy from Rebecca's miraculous recovery still hummed in Elera's chest when the palace messenger arrived. His face was grim, his words clipped. "Elera, the Lycan King requires your presence." Immediately. Elera felt a cold dread creep up her spine, wrapping around her like an icy vine. King Andrew rarely summoned her directly. Not anymore. Not since. She pushed the memory down. She kissed Rebecca's forehead, reassuring her. "I'll be back soon, Mama." Rebecca, surprisingly strong, squeezed her hand. "Be careful, my dear." Moments later, Elera stood before the king's royal steward, a thin, stern-faced wolf named Borin. The steward's voice was like gravel, each word sharp, cutting through the silence of the polished hall. "Elera," he began, his eyes, cold as chipped ice, never meeting hers, "your services are no longer required." Elera blinked. What? But, why? Her voice, usually steady, trembled. My mother, she needs the palaces. Details are not for you to question, Borin interrupted, his tone laced with chilling finality. His Majesty has decided your offering is no longer suitable. The word suitable hung in the air, coated in unspoken implications. Elera's heart pounded. She knew Andrew's paranoia. He still saw her as a potential threat. Because of that, his rejection felt fresh again, burning like a brand on her skin. She had worked so hard, had relied on this meager income. It was all she had. Is this because of the accusations? Elera dared to ask, her voice barely a whisper. Borin's jaw tightened. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he simply looked at her, a dismissive sneer twisting his lips. You are dismissed, Orphan. Gather your things. Leave the palace grounds by sunset. The word sliced through her. Orphan. Always that word. It was meant to make her feel small, worthless. And for a moment, it did. To make things worse, her mind spun. What now? Rebecca needed care. Needed sustenance. Even though her mother was inexplicably better, there were still ongoing needs, medicines, and food. The palace was her only source of income. Andrew's lingering paranoia, his baseless accusation of witchcraft, had cost her everything. She felt the familiar sting of injustice, a burning resentment. But then, a thought surfaced. Was this Andrew, or was there another, unseen hand at play? A new force pulling the strings? Just like that, her world had tilted, shattering the fragile peace of the morning. Now, more desperate than ever, Elera needed a new path. And fast. Elera walked away from the palace, the ornate walls that once symbolized her futile struggle now mocking her with their cold indifference. She clutched the termination notice, a worthless piece of paper. The sun dipped low, casting long, mournful shadows as Elera reached her dwelling. She found Rebecca sitting up, humming softly, looking far too well for someone who had just lost their only income. Rebecca's surprising strength was a new reality Elera hadn't fully processed. They dismissed me, Mama, Elera said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. Rebecca's humming stopped. Her brow furrowed. Oh, Elera. My poor girl. What will we do? I don't know, Elera admitted, burying her face in her hands. The desperation was a bitter taste in her mouth. But then, a knock. A loud, deliberate rap that vibrated through the small dwelling. Elera froze. No one knocked like that. Not here. She exchanged a wary glance with Rebecca. Who? She whispered. She opened the door slowly, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. A tall, imposing wolf stood on her porch, cloaked in dark, rugged furs that seemed to swallow the fading light. His eyes, though, were what struck her first, fierce and untamed, like raw lightning. He smelled of pine, damp earth, and a potent, wild power that made her wolf stir within her, a strange echo of that moonlit run. This wasn't a palace guard. This was something else. Someone else. Elera? His voice was deep, a low rumble that vibrated through her bones. It wasn't unkind, but it was savage. My alpha, Dinero, requires your presence. He has an offer. Elera's breath caught. Dinero. The savage alpha. Whispers of him spoke of untamed lands and dangerous power, a king in all but title. The very name sent a shiver down her spine, part fear, part curiosity. An offer? Elera managed, her voice trembling slightly. The messenger simply nodded, his gaze unwavering. Yes. A position at his residence. It is unique. And it comes with resources. The word hung in the air, hinting at far more than just wages. Elera's mind flashed to Rebecca's sudden healing. Was this connected? Was Dinero the one? And why did he want her? Andrew had called her a witch. Did Dinero know? Was he watching her because he, too, suspected her of dark magic, or because he sensed something else entirely? These questions swirled, thick and fast, in her mind. Because of Rebecca, Elera knew she had no choice. She had to take the risk. Her mother's life depended on it. With a deep breath, Elera made her commitment. Tell your alpha, she stated, her voice stronger now, I will come. Her world had been thrown into disarray, but a new path, however dangerous, had opened before her. She was stepping into the domain of the savage alpha, leaving behind the known dangers of the king's palace for the wild, unpredictable embrace of the unknown. Sure, let's dive into Act 3 for the cursed maid's claim. The carriage rattled to a halt, jarring Elera and Rebecca from their nervous quiet. The air shifted, thick with the scent of wild pine and damp earth, a primal aroma utterly unlike the palace's polished, stale grandeur. Elera helped Rebecca from the carriage, her mother's strength still a fragile gift. What followed was a sprawling, rugged estate, not gilded like King Andrew's palace, but built of dark, rough-hewn stone that seemed to rise from the very forest itself. Raw power hummed in the air. This was Dinero's domain. A gruff but broad-shouldered wolf, his eyes wary yet respectful, met them at the massive wooden doors. Welcome to Alpha Dinero's residence, he rumbled, his voice like stones tumbling over each other. I am Garrick, the head guard. We were expecting you. He led them through wide, echoing halls where pelts lay strewn across stone floors and roaring fireplaces banished the chill. It felt ancient, untamed, yet strangely comforting, like a deep, hidden cave. Meanwhile, Rebecca gasped, her eyes wide as she took in their new quarters, a cozy annex warmed by its own hearth, with soft furs on the beds and a small, herb-scented kitchen. Oh, Elera, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. It's beautiful. More than I ever dreamed. Seeing Rebecca's genuine happiness was a balm to Elera's frayed nerves. This was a place of healing, a sanctuary. But then, a flicker of doubt, why this generosity? What did Dinero want from her? Soon after, Garrick explained the routines. The pack was tight-knit, fiercely loyal to their alpha. Elera's offering here wasn't serving meals, it was managing the estate's considerable stores and records, a task perfectly suited to her knowledge. Yet, she felt eyes on her, subtle glances from the passing pack members. They watched her with a mix of curiosity and an underlying wariness. Because of that, Elera knew her past accusations lingered. She was still the witch to some, even here. As a result, her goal shifted slightly. Beyond Rebecca's well-being, she needed to understand this place, these people, and most importantly, the mysterious alpha who had pulled them from the brink. The vastness of Dinero's domain felt like a world apart, holding both promise and hidden dangers. Days bled into a rhythm of quiet routine for Elera and Rebecca. Rebecca grew stronger, spending hours basking in the warmth of the sun-drenched common room. Elera immersed herself in her new duties, meticulously organizing the estate's sprawling ledgers, her knowledge proving invaluable. She learned the rhythms of Dinero's pack, fierce in their loyalty, direct in their manner, very different from the palace's veiled courtesies. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was a subtle prickle on the back of her neck, a fleeting shadow at the edge of her vision. She would glance up, but see nothing, only the quiet movements of the pack members, or the shifting light through the tall windows. Was it paranoia, or was someone truly observing her? In fact, the whispers were a soft, murmuring undercurrent. Elera caught snippets. The alpha watches her. Andrew's discarded mate. Is it true? The witch sight? Each word a tiny sting, reminding her of the accusation that clung to her like a shroud. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her tasks, her hands moving with precision as she documented supplies or sorted ancient scrolls in the library. More importantly, she needed to prove herself useful, indispensable even, so they wouldn't send her away. Not with Rebecca finally healing. One afternoon, while sorting rare herbs in the storehouse, Elera stumbled upon a small, intricate leather-bound book. Its pages were filled with elegant, swirling script describing ancient healing remedies, but interspersed with strange, glowing symbols. Her knowledge recognized some of the symbols. They spoke of magic, of unseen forces. This was far beyond common healing. As her fingers brushed the book's cover, a faint, almost imperceptible warmth pulsed beneath her touch. She didn't know what scared her more, the implications of the book, or the sudden, cold presence she felt behind her. A growl, low and guttural, resonated from the doorway. Elera spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Dinero. His eyes, usually a piercing blue, were now like molten gold, burning with an intensity that pinned her in place. He stood framed by the doorway, a colossal shadow, his presence filling the space, thick and heavy. He hadn't made a sound. He had been watching. Because of that, a raw fear coursed through Elera, cold as ice, mixing with a strange, undeniable attraction. He knew she was looking at the book. Did he think she was delving into dark magic? What are you doing? His voice was a low, dangerous rumble that sent shivers down her spine, setting her wolf on edge. The air thickened around them, charged with unspoken power and unanswered questions. Dinero's question hung heavy in the air, a challenge and a judgment all at once. Elera clutched the ancient book to her chest, its strange warmth now a comfort against the alpha's chilling gaze. I was just organizing, Elera stammered, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. Her mind raced. Should she lie? Should she explain her knowledge? His eyes, the color of a winter sky about to unleash a storm, bored into hers, searching, probing. They seemed to strip away her defenses, laying bare her fears. She felt utterly exposed. Dinero took a step, then another, moving with the quiet grace of a predator. His scent, wild pine, damp earth, and something uniquely him, filled her senses, potent and intoxicating. He stopped just inches from her, towering over her, his immense presence overwhelming. His gaze dropped to the book in her hands. That book, he rumbled, his voice low, is not for just anyone. Elera swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. I just found it. It caught my eye. The symbols, they're familiar. She dared to meet his gaze, a spark of defiance igniting within her. I have knowledge, Alpha. Not witchcraft. It's different. She remembered Andrew's accusation, the pain of being so misunderstood. She wouldn't let it happen again. Not this time. Dinero's eyes narrowed, studying her face. He seemed to search for something in her expression, a lie, a flicker of deceit. But Elera held firm, her honesty a shield against his power. He reached out, his large hand brushing against hers as he took the book. His touch sent a jolt, a current of raw energy, straight through her. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a trapped bird. Familiar, you say? Dinero's voice was a low hum, almost a purr now, and a strange tension settled between them, charged with unspoken things. Tell me, Elera. What do they tell you? He challenged her, not with anger, but with a predatory curiosity. He wasn't accusing her. Not yet. He was testing her worth, her truth, her very essence. Elera took a shaky breath, forcing herself to focus on the symbols, to let her knowledge guide her. They speak of life, of energy flowing, connecting, and of healing that comes from within, from the very essence of a being. She looked up, her voice gaining strength, conviction. It's not about curses, Alpha. It's about connection. Because her knowledge was a part of her, not something to hide. Dinero's gaze lingered on her face, a flicker of something unreadable, perhaps surprise, perhaps recognition, in his depths. Then, he simply nodded. Interesting, he murmured. He didn't offer praise, nor did he offer accusation. Just that one word, loaded with unspoken weight. He turned then, the book held loosely in his hand, and walked away, disappearing into the shadowed corridors of his formidable estate. Elera stood frozen, her heart still racing, the scent of him clinging to the air around her. Her perception of the savage Alpha was irrevocably altered. She had faced his intense gaze, and she hadn't broken. But she knew this was only the beginning of his tests. The air in Dinero's study was thick enough to chew, heavy with the scent of old parchment, rich mahogany, and his own intoxicating, musky scent. Elera felt it, clear as day, the invisible tendrils of his gaze, sharp and assessing, peeling back layers she hadn't known she possessed. He sat across from her, a king on a throne of shadows, his golden eyes, like molten amber, never leaving hers. A beat later, he lifted a single, dark eyebrow. You defy me, Elera, he rumbled, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the very floorboards. It wasn't a question, but a statement, heavy with unspoken consequences. Elera's breath caught. Defiance? She was merely trying to understand. I defy nothing, she finally managed, her voice trembling despite her efforts to steady it. I simply seek answers. Her heart skipped, a frantic drum against her ribs. Because of that, her hands clenched beneath the table, tiny fists of stubborn resolve. He was testing her again, she knew it. Every interaction with Dinero was a subtle dance of power, a silent interrogation. Not only that, but the atmosphere in his home had shifted since Rebecca's miraculous recovery. Elera felt dismissed from the palace, yet not truly free. She was tethered here, by gratitude and an unnerving curiosity about the man who had saved her mother. What's worse, his tests had grown more frequent, less subtle. Little challenges, unexpected requests, piercing questions about her past, sometimes just that silent, unnerving stare. She didn't know what scared her more, his power, or the strange pull she felt towards it. Answers? Dinero leaned forward, his gaze intensifying, becoming almost predatory. You believe you are owed such a luxury? His words were a silken lash, stinging with a hidden meaning she couldn't quite grasp. As the silence stretched, the ticking of an unseen clock in the room became deafening. Elera felt her wolf, still a nascent flutter within her, stir uneasily. What secrets did he truly hide? And why did she feel this strange urge to unravel every single one? The tension broke when her name left his lips again, softer this time, almost a caress. Elera, Dinero murmured, and the shift in his tone was startling, like a sudden clearing in a thunderous sky. He pushed back from the table, rising with an effortless grace that belied his formidable size, and moved towards the expansive window overlooking his sprawling domain. The moonlight, usually a comforting balm, seemed to emphasize the stark lines of his profile, revealing a vulnerability she hadn't anticipated. "You speak of answers," he began, his voice laced with a raw edge she hadn't heard before, "but some answers come at a price." He paused, his broad shoulders tensing, as if under an invisible weight. Rather than a king, he seemed in that moment like a burdened warrior, scarred by unseen battles. She felt it, clear as day, a flicker of deep-seated pain emanating from him, a raw wound in his powerful aura. What followed was a hesitant, almost reluctant, confession. He spoke of shadows, of betrayals that ran deeper than the grave, of power that had been both a gift and a curse. "My abilities, they are not what you think," he admitted, turning to face her fully, his golden eyes filled with a profound sorrow. "They demand much, and have taken more." His gaze held hers, pleading for understanding, not judgment. This was not the savage alpha, but a soul laid bare. Truth be told, a crack formed between them, the rigid walls of his tests crumbling under the weight of his honesty. "There was a past," he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "a history with a female whose betrayal nearly shattered my world." He didn't name her, but the unspoken agony filled the room. That's why he was so guarded, so distant. He wasn't just testing her, he was protecting himself, a scarred soul terrified of further pain. His confession hung in the air, a fragile bridge built between them, demanding a leap of faith from Elera. Her chest ached with an emotion she couldn't quite name, a blend of sympathy, curiosity, and a blossoming warmth. In the quiet that followed his raw confession, Elera realized the depth of his isolation. He hadn't just been testing her, he had been testing himself, wondering if anyone could ever truly see past the savage alpha and into the wounded man beneath. With every heartbeat, her understanding deepened. I am sorry," Dinero finally uttered, his voice gruff, as if the words physically pained him to speak. "My actions, my methods were harsh. Because of that, I pushed you, tested you, because I needed to know." He took a hesitant step towards her, his eyes, usually so commanding, now filled with a genuine regret. "I needed to know if you were, like them. If you could be trusted." His vulnerability was disarming, a stark contrast to the dominant male she'd first encountered. In that moment, something inside her shifted. The bitterness of Andrew's rejection, the constant fear of judgment, began to recede, replaced by a tentative thread of hope. She saw not a monster, but a man burdened by profound trauma, yearning for genuine connection. "I have caused you pain," he continued, his gaze dropping to her hands, now clasped tightly in her lap. "And for that, I offer my deepest apologies." He lifted his hand, slowly, as if asking permission, and gently covered hers. The simple touch sent a jolt of warmth through her, a comforting fire blooming beneath her skin. It was a tangible apology, a silent promise. And just like that, everything changed. The unspoken question hanging in the air was no longer one of distrust, but of what fragile, beautiful thing could now bloom between them. The morning light, dappled through Dinero's towering study windows, felt different now, warmer somehow. It illuminated a change not just in the room, but in the air between Elera and Dinero. He had started bringing her small, thoughtful gifts, a delicate silver comb carved with a moon phase, a book of ancient fae poetry, and just yesterday, a vial of rare, fragrant herbs that reminded her of Rebecca's favorite wild blossoms. Each item, simple yet profound, was an overt gesture of his care, a silent apology whispered in the language of thoughtful deeds. "This is lovely," Elera said, her fingers tracing the intricate silverwork of the comb. Her voice trembled slightly, a reaction to his proximity and the intensity of his gaze, which had softened considerably, now holding a tender, possessive glow. He watched her, a faint smile playing on his lips, a stark contrast to the stern alpha she'd first known. Not only that, but he began spending more time with Rebecca, too. He'd listen patiently to her stories, sometimes even sharing a quiet laugh. Because of that, a nascent family unit began to form, fragile yet fiercely protected. Rebecca, now vibrant and strong, seemed to blossom under his attention, showering him with the easy affection Elera still guarded. However, a new kind of tension had begun to brew beyond the walls of Dinero's estate. Whispers of Andrew, the Lycan King, reached them, carried on the wind like bitter ashes. He was furious, not just at Elera's disappearance from his court, but at the increasingly undeniable bond forming between her and Dinero. And just like that, everything changed. The fragile peace they'd found felt threatened, precariously balanced on the edge of a brewing storm. That night, beneath a sky dusted with a million shimmering stars, Dinero led Elera and Rebecca to a secluded grove. The air thickened with magic, and the scent of pine and damp earth filled her senses. Rebecca, holding Elera's hand, squeezed it tightly. "He truly cares, child," her mother whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. "I can feel it." Dinero turned, his golden eyes blazing with an almost primal intensity. "Tonight," he began, his voice a deep, resonant rumble, "we acknowledge what has already begun." He looked at Elera, then at Rebecca, his gaze lingering on the older woman with profound respect. "Rebecca, you are cherished. My home is your home, my protection, yours." Rebecca's delighted gasp filled the quiet space. Then, his gaze locked onto Elera, and the space between them burned. "And Elera," he murmured, stepping closer, "you are more than just a presence here. You are the beating heart of this place." His hand reached out, cupping her cheek, his thumb tracing the curve of her jaw. As his scent filled the air, a deep, primal purr vibrated from his chest, and her wolf pressed forward, answering his unspoken call. "Mine," he growled, the word a soft declaration, possessive yet tender. It wasn't a question, but an undeniable claim. This was the point of no return. Their growing closeness, his clear affection, Rebecca's acceptance, it all coalesced into an unyielding bond. Elera felt her soul answer, a deep certainty blooming in her chest. This was family. This was home. As if the world narrowed, all her past pain, all Andrew's rejections, faded into insignificance. Yet, she knew, even as happiness bloomed, that Andrew's jealousy would rage, threatening to consume everything they had just found. Meanwhile, miles away, in the opulent but sterile halls of his own palace, King Andrew paced like a caged beast. His once noble features were contorted by a jealous rage that pulsed through the very stones of his fortress. He slammed a fist onto a nearby table, sending a goblet clattering to the marble floor. "She defies me," he roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The witch dares to entwine herself with him." His beta, a lean, nervous man named Gareth, cowered in the corner. "My king, perhaps there is a misunderstanding," he stammered, instantly regretting the words. "Misunderstanding?" Andrew whirled, his eyes blazing with a dangerous, unstable light. "I saw them, Gareth. With my own eyes. The savage alpha, fawning over my former offering, treating her as if she were his Luna." His voice dripped with venom. He had believed Elera was cursed, a blight on his court, and had publicly disgraced her because of it. Her apparent happiness, her undeniable connection with Dinero, was a personal affront. It chipped away at his carefully constructed image of power and control. To make things worse, reports from his spies confirmed it. Dinero, the reclusive, broken alpha, was not only interacting with the human, but showing her a devotion Andrew had never once offered. The images of them together, sharing quiet moments with the older woman, had been like daggers to his pride. His original rejection of Elera had been a calculated dismissal, a way to maintain his reputation. Now, it was coming back to haunt him, making him look foolish. "She will pay," Andrew hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that promised brutal retribution. "They both will. And that old woman, she will be the key." His lips curled into a cruel smile. He didn't know what scared her more, his unhinged rage or the chilling resolve in his eyes, but a terrible plan, born of wounded pride and escalating jealousy, was already taking shape in the depths of his twisted mind. His next move would threaten the very foundation of the new family. The evening started with the comforting aroma of rosemary and roasted venison, a rare, peaceful dinner shared between Elera, Rebecca, and Dinero in the cozy, sun-drenched dining nook. Laughter, light and genuine, filled the air, a sound that, for so long, had been a stranger to Elera's life. Dinero, for his part, wore a soft, almost domestic expression, a stark contrast to his usual intensity. He watched Elera and Rebecca, a warmth in his golden eyes that made Elera's heart swell. This was it, she thought, the family she'd only dared to dream of. But then, the tranquility shattered. Without warning, a guttural snarl ripped through the air, vibrating through the very foundation of the house. The sound was not of a wild beast, but of a Lycan, raw with malice. Dinero's easy demeanor vanished in an instant, replaced by a primal alertness. He was on his feet in a blur, a low, dangerous growl rising in his throat. Before she could move, the heavy oak door splintered inward, torn from its hinges with a sickening crunch. Figures, cloaked in the shadows of the fading twilight, poured into the room, moving with brutal efficiency. Their scent, foul, aggressive, and undeniably Andrew's pack, hit Elera like a physical blow. One of them, a hulking brute with eyes like chips of ice, lunged directly for Rebecca. Elera screamed, a sound ripped from the depths of her soul, and instinctively threw herself forward, a futile shield. But the brute was too fast, too strong. He shoved Elera aside with terrifying force. Her head cracked against the stone hearth, and agonizing pain exploded behind her eyes. "No!" Dinero roared, his voice a thunderclap of pure fury. He became a whirlwind of savage power, a blur of muscle and claw, tearing through Andrew's men. He fought like a god, a true alpha unleashed, protecting what was his. Yet, there were too many. Another cloaked figure, sleek and quick, darted in from the periphery, grabbing Rebecca, who cried out, "Elera!" Her mother's desperate plea was the last thing Elera heard as darkness swallowed her whole. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Dinero's enraged roars. Her world tilted, spinning into a terrifying abyss. Elera awoke to the cold, hard reality of splintered wood and the metallic tang of her own blood. Her head throbbed, a drumbeat of agony that echoed the emptiness in her chest. Rebecca was gone. Gone. The single word resonated with the hollowness of a tomb. Dinero knelt beside her, his face a mask of primal grief and cold fury, his hands shaking as he gently touched her bruised temple. His scent, usually a comfort, was now laced with desperation, a sharp tang of fear she hadn't detected before. "Rebecca," she whispered, her voice raw, barely a breath. "Andrew has her," Dinero rasped, his eyes blazing with a mixture of helplessness and murderous intent. His jaw was clenched, hard as granite. "He left a message." He gestured to a crudely scrawled note pinned to the shattered doorframe with a hunting knife. "Your claim is worthless. She comes back for a price. Yourself, Elera." or the old woman dies." The words, stark and brutal, stole the air from Elera's lungs. She felt it, clear as day, the agonizing choice pressing down on her like a mountain. This was Andrew's ultimate revenge, a vicious blow aimed not just at her, but at the fragile family she and Dinero had built. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't rationalize a way out that didn't involve immense sacrifice. What's worse, Andrew hadn't just taken Rebecca, he had ripped open the deepest wound in Elera's soul, the fear of being truly alone, of losing the only family she had ever truly cherished. "I have to go," Elera stated, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the tremor shaking her entire being. Because of that, a wave of despair washed over Dinero. He squeezed his eyes shut, a growl rising in his throat. "No," he rasped, his hands gripping her shoulders, almost painfully tight. "I won't lose you too. I can't." His words were a desperate plea, revealing the depth of his own wounds, his own fear of abandonment. His resistance, however, only solidified her resolve. "She is my mother," Elera insisted, tears finally blurring her vision. "My only family." This was the all-is-lost moment, a heart-wrenching crossroads. To save Rebecca, Elera would have to walk away from the stable future, the love, and the nascent family bond she had just found with Dinero. The choice was unbearable, a testament to Andrew's cruelty. Her heart ached, torn between the only two people who truly mattered. Could their new, fragile bond withstand such a devastating test? The cavernous training hall, usually filled with the rhythmic thud of practice blows, was silent, heavy with a new, dangerous resolve. Elera stood before Dinero, her face set, her eyes burning with a fierce determination that mirrored his own. Her head still throbbed, but the physical pain was dwarfed by the agonizing ache of Rebecca's absence. Dinero's fury was a tangible force, a raw, untamed current that crackled around him. He paced like a storm front, his powerful frame taut with suppressed violence. "We go together," Elera stated, her voice unwavering, a testament to her newfound strength. She met his gaze, unafraid of the raw power swirling within him. "There's no other way." She felt it, clear as day, the complete unity between them, forged in the crucible of their shared desperation. Her wolf, dormant for so long, stirred aggressively within her, sensing the approaching confrontation, eager for the fight. Dinero stopped, turning sharply to face her. His golden eyes, usually so intense, softened just a fraction as they swept over her, taking in her bruised temple, the stubborn set of her jaw. "His lair is fortified," he growled, his voice a low, rumbling warning. "Andrew is a coward, but a cunning one. He will anticipate us." He wasn't trying to dissuade her, but to prepare her for the brutal reality. Despite that, Elera didn't flinch. "Then we will be cunnier," she retorted, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "He has underestimated you, and he has certainly underestimated me." She remembered Andrew's condescending sneers, his casual dismissal. Because of that, a cold resolve settled in her gut. She would make him pay. This wasn't just about rescuing Rebecca, it was about reclaiming their dignity, their family, their future. And just like that, everything changed. Their individual pain had merged into a singular, unyielding purpose, driving them towards the inevitable confrontation. The forest that bordered Andrew's territory felt alive that night, holding its breath as Elera and Dinero moved through it with silent, predatory grace. The air thickened with his scent, a primal musk that filled Elera with a strange blend of terror and exhilaration. Dinero, in his powerful Lycan form, was a magnificent, terrifying sight, a blur of midnight fur and coiled muscle, his golden eyes blazing like beacons in the darkness. He was the embodiment of his savage power, a force of nature unleashed. As they approached Andrew's heavily guarded fortress, a chilling howl pierced the night, a warning from one of Andrew's sentries. "Stay behind me," Dinero rumbled, his voice a low growl that vibrated through Elera's very bones. His words were a command, but also a promise of unwavering protectiveness. What followed was a maelstrom of violence. Dinero burst through the outer defenses like a phantom, moving with a speed that defied belief. Andrew's guards, caught off guard by the sheer ferocity of his attack, fell before him. He fought with a brutal elegance, his massive paws tearing, his jaws snapping, a primal force reclaiming what was stolen. Elera watched, awestruck and terrified, at the sheer, unbridled power she had only glimpsed before. This was not just a fight, it was a reckoning. With every step he took deeper into the fortress, the danger intensified. Andrew's inner guard, more skilled and numerous, met them with a desperate ferocity. Yet, Dinero pressed forward, relentless, his focus absolute. He was a whirlwind of motion, a terrifying guardian, ensuring no enemy even dared to look Elera's way. The air thickened with the scent of blood and fear, and Elera felt her own instincts surging, her hand instinctively reaching for the small, heavy hunting knife Dinero had given her for protection. She knew, deep down, that the true battle, the one for Rebecca and for their future, was yet to come. The final chamber was opulent, mocking in its grandeur, and there, bound to a heavy wooden chair, was Rebecca. Her eyes, wide with fear, locked onto Elera's. Andrew stood before her, a triumphant, cruel smirk on his face. "So, you came," he sneered, his gaze sweeping over Dinero's massive Lycan form with a mixture of contempt and fear. "The witch and her beast. A fitting end to your pathetic little fantasy." Dinero's response was a low, rumbling growl that shook the very foundations of the room. He shifted back to his human form with a ripple of muscle and bone, his clothes appearing as if from nowhere, but his golden eyes still blazed with a primal, untamed fury. "Release her, Andrew," he commanded, his voice laced with the cold promise of pain. Andrew merely laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think it's that simple? She chose you, Alpha. She abandoned me, her rightful king. And for that, she will pay with her life." He pulled a glinting dagger from his belt, its point resting chillingly at Rebecca's throat. "No!" Elera screamed, her voice a raw cry of anguish. In that moment, a guttural growl rose in her own throat, startling even her. She felt her wolf, fully awakened now, pressing forward, demanding to be let loose. This was her mother. Her family. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stand idly by. Dinero moved then, not with brute force, but with a terrifying precision, a strategic grace born of countless battles. Andrew, distracted by Elera's outburst, faltered for a mere heartbeat. That was all Dinero needed. He struck, a blur of motion, disarming Andrew with a swift, brutal efficiency. The dagger clattered to the floor. Andrew roared in frustrated rage, lunging, but Dinero was faster, stronger. The final confrontation was swift and decisive. Dinero, with every ounce of his savage power, subdued Andrew, not killing him, but breaking him, asserting his dominance in a way that left no doubt who truly held power. As the silence stretched, Dinero rushed to Rebecca, untying her with gentle hands. Elera knelt, embracing her mother, tears streaming down her face. Their family, broken but not shattered, was finally whole again, a testament to love forged in the fires of adversity. The prejudices and threats of the past had been faced and overcome. The echoes of the battle faded, replaced by the shaky breaths of relief. Rebecca, safe in Elera's embrace, wept softly, her body trembling with the lingering fear. Dinero stood over Andrew, who lay defeated, broken but alive, a stark reminder of the king's shattered reign. The savage alpha didn't allow him the dignity of a quick end. Andrew would face justice, not mercy. Elera felt it, clear as day, the profound sense of justice settling in her chest. Moments later, Dinero turned to them, his golden eyes sweeping over Elera and Rebecca, a warmth in their depths that spoke volumes. He knelt before Rebecca, his massive frame humbled, and extended a hand to help her up. "You are safe now, honored mother," he rumbled, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a powerful Lycan. Rebecca, tears still wet on her cheeks, reached out and cupped his face, her touch full of gratitude. This was a family, not by blood, but by choice and fierce protection. As a result, the immediate aftermath was a flurry of activity. Dinero's pack, who had joined the fray once Andrew's inner guards were subdued, now moved with quiet efficiency, securing the castle. Word of Andrew's defeat and Rebecca's rescue spread like wildfire through the Lycan territories. Not only that, but tales of Dinero's savage power, now intertwined with his tender protectiveness, began to transform his legend. He wasn't just the broken recluse, he was a leader who fought for his own, and for the innocent. Later that day, in the newly reclaimed Great Hall, Dinero gathered his most trusted pack members. He stood tall, a true alpha, with Elera by his side. "Elera," he announced, his voice ringing with authority, "has proven her strength, her loyalty, and her unwavering heart. She is my mate, my Luna." His gaze locked with hers, a silent promise passing between them. With a single glance, the pack's acceptance, once a distant dream, was palpable. Her transformation, from a rejected, burdened orphan to a celebrated Luna, felt complete. Weeks later, the air crackled with anticipation, not tension, but pure, unadulterated joy. A grand ceremony was meticulously planned, not hidden away, but open for all to witness. Because of that, pack members from across the vast territories gathered, drawn by curiosity, respect, and a genuine desire to celebrate. The full moon, a colossal pearl in the velvet sky, cast a silvery glow over Dinero's transformed estate. Its light seemed to bless every leaf, every stone, every beating heart present. Rebecca, radiant and beaming, personally helped Elera prepare. She smoothed the silken gown, adorned with delicate silver embroidery that shimmered in the moonlight. "You were always destined for greatness, my child," Rebecca whispered, her eyes filled with happy tears. "I just knew it." The bond between mother and daughter, once threatened by illness and abduction, was now unbreakable, fortified by shared triumph. Then, as if fate demanded it, Elera stepped out onto the moonlit clearing. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered crowd. She walked towards Dinero, who stood waiting, his powerful frame perfectly still, his eyes, like molten gold, fixed solely on her. He was no longer the recluse, but a loving alpha, his face alight with an emotion so profound it stole Elera's breath. As the bond pulsed between them, his scent, rich and comforting, enveloped her. "My Luna," Dinero murmured, his voice thick with emotion, as she finally reached him. He took her hands, his touch warm and firm. Under the weight of his stare, Elera felt her soul answer, a deep resonance that settled her spirit. They exchanged vows beneath the ancient trees, promises whispered under the watchful eye of the full moon. It was a ceremony of eternal bonds, a declaration of a new equilibrium. Dinero's journey from broken alpha to loving family leader, and Elera's from outcast to queen, culminated in this powerful, undeniable union. The feast that followed was a joyous explosion of laughter, music, and abundant food. Children chased each other through the moonlit gardens, pack members shared stories and toasts, and the air thrummed with a vibrant sense of community. Elera, now truly Dinero's Luna, moved among them with grace and confidence. She accepted their congratulations, their loyalty, and their newfound respect with a quiet dignity she hadn't known she possessed. She wore her new role not as a crown, but as a mantle of love and belonging. Dinero, meanwhile, was a revelation. He laughed freely, his deep rumble echoing through the night. He held Elera's hand, sometimes possessively, always tenderly, pulling her close as if to reassure himself she was truly there. His eyes, once shadowed with pain, now shone with a light of deep contentment. He was no longer just the savage alpha, he was a husband, a son-in-law, a leader, and most importantly, a fully healed soul. Rebecca sat nearby, chatting happily with some of the older pack members, a contented smile gracing her lips. She had witnessed her daughter's triumph, and her own peace was palpable. Her acceptance of Dinero, her joy in their union, cemented the new family's foundation. What's more, the false accusations of witchcraft against Elera were now openly scoffed at, replaced by reverence for her strength and her true mate's power. As the night deepened, Elera leaned into Dinero, resting her head against his shoulder. The moon, their silent witness, seemed to smile down upon them. "We did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We found our home." He tightened his arm around her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "My love," he murmured, "we found our family." The answer to the core emotional question, can love heal the deepest wounds of rejection and solitude, forging a family stronger than any past trauma or societal expectation, was clear. Under the full moon, their hearts beat as one, forever bound, forever home.